It is win number 17 for Max Verstappen here in Sao Paulo, but that does not even tell half the story after a chaotic start and the ultimate battle between two drivers for that final spot on the podium. What an absolutely sensational finale to an entertaining race here at Interlagos. But one man continues to reign supreme. Welcome to your post-race show. And welcome to possibly the noisiest spot we've ever done a post-race show, and we are surrounded by fans. There are fans lining the balcony here as well. We've got the driver media pen behind. I think we're going to hear quite a lot of cheering, Hinch, but what an extraordinary race, an extraordinary race track, an extraordinary finish, and the fans as well, my goodness me.
It had it all. I mean, it had drama right from the formation lap. It wasn't even the start of the race. Poor Charles Leclerc with his mechanical issues coming to the grid, and then from there, it just escalated. Massive first lap crash, incredible battles on track all the way down to the finish line. Half a tenth decided the last podium spot. But again, Max Verstappen absolutely unbeatable. It was awesome, start to finish. 53 thousandths is what it took for Fernando Alonso to step on the podium for the first time since Zandvoort and the first time here in a decade. We'll get on to all of that very, very soon. I can now, though, welcome our first driver who has waited very patiently after finishing the media pen. A P11 for Logan Sargeant here today. Logan, so close, but how are you feeling? Obviously starting that race down in P20 and a chaotic start at that.
Yeah, honestly, a bit disappointed. I wanted to try and capitalize and have a good race after, unfortunately, a lot of cars went out in turn one. But yeah, kept my nose clean, did my best to manage it. A bit of a theme of the weekend for us, just having this issue with rear overheating. Same in qualifying, same in the race, and would have helped us with if the cloud cover stayed, but yeah, just missed out. Well, it's been a good 3 weeks, and regroup and get ready for Vegas.
Yeah, a couple more to go still, but you would have had a pretty good view of that first quarter chaos. How did it look from your seat?
Honestly, I started on that medium tire. The out lap was, the formation lap was compromised because of Charles in turn 6. So I really had very little temperature in the tire. So I got a bunch of wheel spin off the start, which was maybe a good thing in the end. I just saw smoke and debris everywhere and just backed out of it, made sure I kept everything intact, and kept the car under me for the rest of the race.
I mean, there's quite a lot of debris on the track. Did you have any issues? Did you have to switch tires under the red, or?
Well, I changed to the soft tire. We expected that to be a better tire for the race, so I got rid of the medium. I had 3 new softs for the race, so that was honestly a benefit for us. But no, I mean, in turn 1, I saw a tire flying through the air. I saw a front wing in the air. I was just trying to avoid everything, but all the tires were okay. The car was okay. Yeah, that's all that matters.
Yeah, we're glad to see everyone okay after that start. You started on the medium, as you said, obviously just trying to do something a little bit different to you know, other drivers too. Coming onto the soft then after that. But talk me through the tyre management. It's very much been a talking point for this weekend. The tyre deg has been so high. How difficult is it to manage these tyres at a racetrack like this?
The thing is, you have a lot of rear wear, but you also have a lot of rear thermal effect as well. So you're struggling on both ends of the management throughout a stint. The fronts aren't easy to manage as well, so you're just getting a bit of everything. But for us, the main issue is the rear. To be honest, at these very high temperature events, even in, sorry, I forget, but there's been times this year where the temperature goes very high for qualifying and we just lose rear grip. And or as we saw Mexico. Sorry, I knew there was one recently.
You've had a lot of races in a row here. It's all good.
Exactly. Mexico, we had really good pace, FP1, FP2, FP3. Temperature came up and we struggled. So it's something we need to get on top of for the future, for sure. But the good news is Vegas looks cold.
And long straights.
And long straights.
Good for you.
Oh, that's exciting for a Williams.
Fingers crossed. Obviously used to race there all the time in karting as a kid. It's going to be special to go back there, and it treated me well in the past, so I'm looking forward to that.
Another home race for you, potentially another chance to pick up some points as well before the season ends. Thank you so much for joining us, Logan. Really appreciate it. And sorry, I know P11 is very much the worst place a driver can finish. So
well, you never know. You never know. We'll see. But,
I like your thinking.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Logan. Cheers, appreciate it. Oh, great to hear from Logan. And look, all smiles, despite P11, as you've said so much, Hinch. It is absolutely the worst position, isn't it? Whether you're in Q2, just knocked out in qualifying, whether you're finishing a race. It hurts, doesn't it? And it's going to hurt him more. Look, he's so desperate for these points, not just to help Williams in the constructor standings, but to help his own cause fight for that 24 seat.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure. There's no doubt about it. And to be so close, yeah, it is so painful as a driver. But at the same time, he made a good point. I mean, he kept his nose clean. The team did a good job. We saw a bunch of mechanical issues today, some reliability issues, not super common in modern Formula One. Both Alphas had issues. One of the Mercedes had to retire. So the fact that the team had a car that lasted, he stayed out of trouble, executed a good race. It just came up that tiny bit short.
And look, first time here at Interlagos as well.
Sure.
Plenty to learn for him, absolutely. But on the other side of the garage for Alex Albon, it was all over before the race really even began. Let's hear from him now.
Hi, Alex. Sorry to see you here so early. It seemed like you were a bit of a passenger in that first lap incident. What happened from your point of view?
Yes, quite a racing incident, I think. Had a great start. I think it was the best one on the grid. Put alongside the two Hasses. Felt like we were pretty much almost there, overtook them. But I think the car on the left, the far left, was likely a bit blindsided. Started to move across, but obviously there was myself and another Hass in between. Yeah, it was one of them ones. It's happened before. Nothing we can do. Just frustrating, obviously, just because we're in a championship battle, we can't really lose out on points like that. And we've kind of opened up the race for the others to score points.
Is it also made all the more frustrating that, as you said, you had a good start and yesterday you showed good pace in the sprint, that points could have been on the table for you guys today?
We knew if we could get past the Hass at the start, we were going to have a good race. It was looking like that. So, yeah, it's one of them things. We still got Vegas and Abu Dhabi to try to finish off strong, so that'll be the main aim.
All right, thank you very much.
Oh, points potentially lost for Williams and for Albon there. He sounded like he might have had a chance of something here, and he will never, ever know. Out before it even began, and they are now just 7 points ahead of AlphaTauri. Let's unpack the start, shall we, Hinch? Because, my goodness me, it was something, wasn't it? Albon, Magnussen, you just saw it sort of in the distance as you were following the leaders through to turn one, and you knew that someone's race was over for sure.
Yeah, it's one of those tough situations on a race start like that. You're trying to look forward, you're trying to look left and right, you're trying to look behind you. As a driver, you're monitoring everything all at the same time, so it's a massive challenge. In this case, you know, one of the Haas was sort of in a sandwich, and Albon ultimately was sort of a victim of circumstance. Both of them got hurt there and that, but it's one of those things, unfortunately, racing deal.
Yeah, it really is. As we are looking at these start replays, we do have Pierre Gasly, who has joined us here in the studio. Pierre, points today. I know it's been quite a frustrating weekend for you guys to try and get this car in the right window. How do you look back on it now?
It was probably one of our best day of the year, I'm not gonna lie. You know, we started in 15s. As you say, it's been a tricky weekend for us on this track, and yeah, to end up in P7, overtaking both Mercedes, which had a tough day, and you know, I was pretty much in the gearbox of Carlos for the entire race, so we clearly didn't expect that. But as a team, I'm very pleased with what I've seen today from the guy. Good strategy, good pit stops, good tire management, and yeah, it was a fun race.
You had some blistering pace out there. I know we've got to let you go,
yeah,
but thank you so much for joining us. Well done. Some valuable points for Alpine and for Pierre Gasly there. So that start then was very much a chaotic sort of beginning to this Sao Paulo Grand Prix. But before we even got to the start, on the formation lap itself, Charles Leclerc suddenly in the barriers and saying on the race radio, hydraulics, I am just so unlucky. Just explain what you think went on there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously a hydraulic failure in the car, and from that onboard, you can actually see he's coming through turn 6, and you see all of a sudden the wheel jerk. That's the power steering cutting out. You can see he's immediately fighting the car, and then something locks up in the rear end, spins around and in the tires. So, you know, obviously a very clear failure. It's a rare one, but again, we've had a couple different issues with reliability today, which is sort of surprising. But you just got to feel so bad for the guy. Great qualifying effort. Was going to be in with a shout at a podium here, and literally over before it started.
You can hear Sergio Perez and Max Verstappen are in the media pen by the cheers and the shouts around us. It's quite the atmosphere, isn't it? Carlos Sainz also complaining about the clutch pedal as well, saying we've got to get rid of this clutch as soon as the car gets back to Maranello. You know, a tricky, frustrating day it seems for Ferrari.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, only having one car in the race from the get-go, second time in the last couple races that's happened. Carlos not happy with the clutch. There are so many different settings and adjustments you can make for that. They're clearly trying something on the Ferrari to improve the launches. We've seen other cars improve their launches so far this season, notably the Red Bulls, obviously, in the last few rounds. These teams are always pushing. They're always trying to find something new. Whatever they're doing on the 55, he wasn't super thrilled with it. And then, yeah, it was a pretty quiet race, wasn't it? They were not really showing the pace that they wanted to have. Even with the lower temperatures, degradation still a huge issue for them. So I guess good to bring home some points, but ultimately, you know, just a kind of a day to forget for Ferrari.
Yeah, still P6, look, for Carlos Sainz, and it's all important in their battle with Mercedes for P2 in the championship. Imi Barkley is with Fred Vasseur.
Fred, thanks for joining us. Should we start with the bad news first? What a shock on that formation lap.
Yeah, that it's a shame that Charles lost the power steering, the hydraulic, and the engine. It was a command from the system, and we need to understand the reason. But it's a shame because I think it was a good opportunity for Charles and for the team.
Well, Sainz took the great opportunity. He finished in 6th. What did you make of his race?
Overall, I think that he had not a great start at the beginning, and then he was into the field, and then he was able to come back to overtake the 2 Mercedes. We are taking point on Mercedes, and so I think he did a good race, a solid one. But we have a bitter taste that with the fact that Charles didn't do the start.
Completely understandable. Thank you. On to the next.
Tricky day then for Ferrari, just one car scoring points, but they may well be valuable points in the battle with Mercedes. We'll have to wait and see. And of course, Mercedes also losing a car as well. Alfa Romeo, for them though, we're still looking at this battle between P7 and P10 in the constructor standings. A torrid day for them with a double DNF. We're hearing Bottas potentially with PU issues, Joe with a water leak issue. That's hearsay within the paddock, but not a good day for them. Not a good day for Mercedes, and it just seemed to go from bad to worse. We saw their tyre degradation was pretty much a horror show in the sprint race yesterday, and it has not got any better today.
No, and nor should it. You know, it's a Parc Fermé race. That's kind of the nature of the beast here. I think George mentioned yesterday that hopefully the cooler temperatures might make a little bit of a difference. It obviously wasn't enough, and you know, you heard some of the desperation from Lewis on the radio, laughing at one point. He's like, no, I'm doing what I can. This is what it's got. And the fact that in that last stint they were even debating, or at least Lewis mentioned over the radio, we should have put on the hards. Nobody ran the hards today. That wasn't even in consideration. Those tires were so, you know, undesirable. But that's how bad he felt they were on the softs. It's a tough thing as a driver to suffer through a race when pretty early on you know that the car's not going to last in terms of tire degradation, and you're just sort of hanging on, trying to keep whoever you can behind you. The two Mercedes were racing each other a little bit earlier.
And there was some interesting race radio, wasn't there? Because George Russell saying, well, are we working together or are we doing our own race? I can't quite manage this pace. I can't quite stick with him. We're going to have to manage it or else I'm going to eat these tyres up. You could hear his frustration on the radio before, of course, he ultimately retired as well.
Yeah, and again, that was another one that we weren't expecting. But the frustration is sort of understandable because the response from the pit wall was, we're still discussing. Guys, we're in the middle of a motor race. Like, you have to have those decisions made. You got to pull the trigger on one of those two plans. George seemed like he was willing to play along with either one, but I think the limbo was a bit frustrating. Ultimately, it didn't really affect the day, but that's still something they're probably going to be talking about tomorrow.
George Russell did retire as well for a high PU oil temperature, and they felt the car was at an imminent risk of failure, so pulled the plug on the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Well, Julien Simon-Chaton is standing by in the pit lane, looking at what's going on.
So we are here in the pit lane. The race just finished, but the race actually just started for the guys. On top of what they just done, now it will be time for pack-up to everyone. So the pack-up in Formula One is very, very complicated. It's a huge logistic. So a lot, as you can see, everybody is starting to dismount a bit. You see these guys going to dismount the rear wing, the front wing. We will have the tires being put in a box and so on. So it's a huge logistic challenge. To give you an idea, in Formula One, you have basically a part going in sea freight, and a part going in air freight. So the part in sea freight is usually sent 6 to 7 weeks before a race. Then you have another part that goes in air freight, that's around 34 tons. So imagine the price per ton, that's huge. And this air freight is going from race to race. So that's a big, big thing. Then in terms of sea freight, usually the team have 6 sets of garage equipment. So you can see this garage equipment that we can see there. We're talking about 6 sets. So each set contains 3 to 4 feet container of 20 tons. So that's huge what the team have to carry over from one race to another. Another thing that is very tricky, obviously, is all about the custom. Custom in certain countries like China, for example, or even Brazil can be very, very, very tricky. It can delay, team can receive part late. I'm hearing as well that Alpha got an upgrade plan, but they could not get it because of the custom, so that's a bit of a shame. And the other thing a bit important to understand is that the cars after the race will be completely dismantled. So the 2 cars will come basically like a giant Lego in a box, and they will be rebuilt new completely to Vegas. In Vegas, there will be already a setup crew already there trying to mount the box received 7 weeks ago from the sea freight, and that will make all the show again, and all the show will start again from Vegas.
Oh, thank you very much, Julien. It's just fascinating to watch these giant, massive, behemoth events packed down and already carted off just as the checkered flag falls. It's absolutely brilliant. So to recap then, we have DNS for Leclerc, for Albon, for Magnussen, and for both Alfa Romeo, Zhou and Bottas as well. We then had Piastri and Ricciardo caught up in that start with both of them sustaining damage. They took a lap out and therefore were 1 lap behind at the restart after some very frantic work to get themselves into the race during the red flag repair, but had to start from the pit lane 1 lap down. P14 and P13 for the 2 Australians, P12 for Nico Hülkenberg just outside the points. But Ricciardo just over here actually as he's signing some things as well. But let's get into what was, I'd say, the most extraordinary moment of that race, the fight, the battle that ensued for P3 on the podium. Both drivers in this battle as well, Sergio Perez and Fernando Alonso. Perez has not had a podium since Monza. Perez is at the moment the sort of experiencing swirling rumours around his future, very much out of his control. Fernando Alonso equally has experienced his fair share of social media rumours in the recent week. Aston Martin have been on a horrible downturn of form. They've been searching, experimenting, trying to find some answers. Both didn't just want that podium, both needed that podium. Fernando Alonso without a podium since Zandvoort in his first here in a decade. Pinch, he got it done, but my goodness me, what a final lap.
Oh, he had to work for it, no doubt about it. Checo definitely made him work for it. It was awesome. I mean, that was just classic, just to the wire motor racing. It was so much fun to call from the booth. I had to turn my microphone off. I was screaming at the TV, and I know Alex Jakes would not have liked my my input at that point. But no, I mean, it was such an ebb and flow. And the stint before, it really looked like on the mediums, Fernando had him covered, had enough pace, could keep a decent gap. I don't think Checo really had an answer for him. Switch onto those softs, even though Fernando had the new softs to the use that Checo had, he just closed that gap down. He had a couple really good runs at him. Then it seemed like he'd used the best of his tires, and maybe the chance had really gone. But he played it so well. He tried to time it perfectly. I want to say he timed it perfectly. Either way, he got his elbows out. It was great aggressive driving from Checo, which we love to see. But it's Fernando Alonso. He is just the craftiest, wiliest driver out here. He's the most experienced driver in history, and it really showed today. No doubt Checo had the pace advantage, but Fernando put his car in exactly the right place at exactly the right time. I mean, 1/2 tenth of a second. That guy's a 2-time world champion. I think he was cheering on the podium almost as much as he was when he was winning titles here in Brazil. It was just phenomenal.
It really was, absolutely. And it's one that you could watch again and again and again. I think I want to watch it again to understand how Fernando got the job done, indeed how Perez got the job done initially. It was absolutely fascinating. You can rewatch it in our race highlights on YouTube. I think Alex Jakes went to about a 12 out of 10 at that moment, so headphone users beware. But let's now hear from the wily old fox himself, Fernando Alonso.
Congratulations, Fernando. great performance from you and your team this weekend. But that fight at the end with Checo, he called it enjoyable. How was it for you? Take us inside the cockpit.
Yeah, it was just intense. I mean, for me, it was a little bit easier, let's say, until the last 5 laps. I thought that I had everything under control, but then when I started pushing 5 laps to the end, he was even closer. So I didn't understand why his pace was coming from. And yeah, 2 laps before the checkered flag, he overtook me. I thought everything was done by that moment, but in the last lap I had another chance and I went for it, and very close to the line. So yeah, very aggressive moves, a lot of respect, and I'm happy that it was with Checo and we could put a good show.
Put on a good show, but you also delivered a trophy for your team. First time since Zandvoort, that's got to feel really, really good after a few experimental weekends.
Yeah, it was tough. I think the last few months we had some difficulties on finding the pace and also with the car direction as well. But it seems that now we understood a few things on the setup, few things also on the car, and this is for the team because they've been putting a lot of work to understand this package, and today's result is a boost for everyone.
Does that bode well for Vegas and Abu Dhabi?
Yeah, definitely. I think after the last 2 events, we were a little bit down, a little bit concerned about this final part of the season, and now we cannot wait to go to Vegas. So this is a good energy.
All right, thank you very much.
Oh, we all can't wait to go to Vegas, can we? Thank you, Fernando Alonso and Nadine Bart-Williams, doing interviews in the media pen just behind cameraman Ollie here. From a double DNF in Mexico to a P3 and a P5 for Lance Stroll. That's his second best finish of the season, behind a P4 earlier on in Australia. And he's actually now risen back into the top 10 in the constructor standings, in the driver standings. I'm pretty sure last time I checked, Lance Stroll's still a driver. But Fernando Alonso, Sergio Perez, you've heard the ecstasy, you've heard the joy. There's another side of the coin, isn't there? And that is Sergio Perez will be absolutely gutted. He thought he'd had that heroic moment to get the job done. He'd had brilliant pace. He's back into the top 3 for this weekend in the sprint race anyway, as we say, for the first time since Monza. And then for it to be taken away at the last, and then to have one last gasp attempt and still not get there.
I mean, it almost would have felt as bad as losing a race win, I think, just for where, Checo is in the season and how everything's gone. And it had been such a good race. It was a well-managed race. Remember, he started back in P9. Fernando started up on the second row. So he had to do a lot to even put himself in that position. And he would have been feeling so good into turn 1 on lap 70, and then it all just sort of came unglued. And as a driver, it is such a gut punch. You feel like you've let yourself down, you let your team down, your fans, your sponsors, everybody. Look, it was still a great drive from him. It was still a great result from him. Good amount of points. Opened the gap to Lewis Hamilton in P2 for the Drivers' Championship. There's a lot of positives to take out of the day, but right now, he doesn't care about any of those, and it sucks. But it's just nature of the beast.
Yeah, if P11 hurts, P4 by 53 thousandths must hurt all the more. But they're really important points, actually. I think when the sharp pain he's probably experiencing right now just begins to fade, what he will realise is that he's never achieved P2 in a championship before. He has opened that gap over Lewis Hamilton. He's outscored him well here this weekend, and that'll be good for him. As just behind here, we've seen Sergio Perez embrace Fernando Alonso, and Perez just walking through shot here, through the fans who are calling his name. Nice to see those two embrace. All's fair in love and war after all, but yeah, it's going to hurt for now, but I think there are very, very positive feelings to take into Vegas, certainly.
Yeah, I think he'll go back to the team, and I think he's going to get nothing but praise from the team.
Absolutely.
I think Christian Horner and the whole group there is going to just, tell him what a good job he did, what a great weekend it was. His pace relative to Max in qualifying is much closer, like it's been the last few weeks. It's still a great rebound from Mexico, and like you say, there's still 2 rounds left. Great opportunity in Vegas. We know he loves the street circuit. Does Checo?
Yeah.
So if I'm him by Tuesday, I'm feeling a little better, and I'm really excited to get back to the States.
That's a really good point, though, you've just made there, Hinch, because this result hasn't just come off the back of some, relatively mediocre form by Perez's and Red Bull's standards. It's come off the back of a weekend that was absolutely heartbreaking for him. He was incredibly emotional after that turn 1 crash in Mexico at his home race. He's bounced back here with such mental fortitude.
Yeah, and it's going to feel like another gut punch, 2 weeks in a row. But again, he'll realize eventually that this was actually a solid weekend. It was good for him. It was good for the season. It's good for the team. But back-to-back days leaving the racetrack on just a low note, it hurts. But I think it's just going to keep motivating him because we saw it in Mexico, but he bounced back brilliantly here. So mentally, I think he's in a good spot. He's showing that strength, and he just needs to keep executing like this.
A valiant effort and a great race today from Sergio Perez, but just shy by 53 thousandths of the podium. Let's hear from him now.
Checo, that was a thrilling battle with Fernando at the end. Unlucky to come out on the other side of it. How are you feeling? Some of your emotions after that?
Yeah, I mean, it was a great fight with Fernando. I don't think with a lot of drivers you can do this type of maneuvers, you know. It was really tight from beginning to the end, and it was super enjoyable, to be honest. I did have a lot of fun. In the end, he ended up getting the podium, but it's how the sport is.
From a personal point of view, you've had a really good weekend. You know, you top 3 in the sprint, 4th today. You must be really happy with how you performed this weekend.
Yeah, it was a good performance. I think we were just unlucky with the yellow flag there in the end. But overall, I think it was a good race.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, well, there we go. Sergio Perez. This might smart for a little while, but luckily we've got a race in about 10 days' time, a race weekend in about 10 days' time, and we can get to it again. We do now have the photo finish of this one. This is an exclusive to you here as well with the F1 Live post-race show. Here it is. This is your photo finish, and it's absolutely astonishing. Look at that.
I mean, it's amazing when you think the pace that they're going, the speed that they're going, that difference, that's what half a tenth looks like on the racetrack. We hear that margin in qualifying a lot, but that's what 53 thousandths of a second looks like on the track. Just, let's not show Checo that picture just yet. It might be a bit soon.
No, absolutely not. We won't. And look, Perez did not get up to P4 in the easy way whatsoever. Yes, Mercedes had a torrid race, but Lewis Hamilton was giving in some strife out there as well. There were some great battles between the two of them.
Again, he just drove really well. He had to get his elbows out. He had to be aggressive. It was controlled aggression. There was no situation where he botched a pass and got passed back. It was just a really well-raced day for him. And yeah, like you said, he actually had a really good start. His jump off the line was incredible. He hit a wall of cars. There was 3 wide in front of him. He had nowhere to go. He sort of got snookered a little bit. He probably should have been a space or 2 higher coming out of turns 1 and 2, just based on the start he had. But again, that's what happens when you're starting back in P9. So credit to him for even putting himself in a position to be fighting for a podium today.
And for Lewis Hamilton as well, look, despite the fact that he knew he didn't have the car with him today whatsoever, it looked like a horrible day. He said he was fighting the car yesterday as well. He was still able to make that car as wide as he could to try and defend any kind of points. And he knows as well that he's battling Sergio Perez for P2. It wasn't just about final positions in this race.
No, it's points at the end of the day, right? They want that position. They want to fight Checo for it all the way to the end. Momentum's been in Hamilton's side for the last few rounds. The disqualification in Coda obviously is a huge blow to that. But yeah, I mean, again, such a difficult situation as a driver when you know so early in the day you're really on the back foot. You're kind of playing defense. It's damage limitation. All these terms that get thrown out when you're having that kind of day. But Lewis is also one of those guys where sometimes when he's saying things like that on the radio, he still pulls out these incredible performances. Right. So you never really know when Lewis gets on the radio upset how bad it's going to be.
The tires have gone fastest lap.
Exactly. Yeah. Catch the leader, pass the leader, win the race. It's just like old Hamilton, right? But definitely you could see the cars were a handful today. Excellent job to hang on to some points, all things considered. But, he said it earlier this weekend. He cannot wait to throw that car in the bin and never have to drive it again. Upgrades have not been what they needed. Even those odd flashes of speed and brilliance out of the car, it's just too inconsistent. Track to track, it's not where it needs to be. And he's counting the days down till they can have, the checkered flag in Abu Dhabi and never sit in the W14 again, I think.
Oh, real head scratching then at Mercedes to head into 2024 with what they will hope will be a competitive race car from P5 on the grid down to P8 in the results for Lewis Hamilton. And of course, as mentioned earlier, a DNF as well for George Russell. So a really tricky day for Mercedes. A brilliant day though for Aston Martin. Lance Stroll with a P5, as I mentioned, that moves him back into the top 10 in the driver standings as well. But I think it's more important than that for Lance Stroll, isn't it? He's equally been a driver under pressure, under intense scrutiny of how perhaps he's behaved in the garage, of how perhaps, you know, he's behaved in interviews, of how he's been driving, whether he cares enough, whether he wants this enough. And this is a real statement from him, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And you know what? Credit to Lance, because he's the results haven't been there the last few weeks necessarily, but he's actually done a really good job when you think from when those upgrades came in Austin. A very difficult day, weekend really for that team. They started from pit lane, made a bunch of adjustments. He drove up into the points. Solid race day pace there. One of the biggest issues is his qualifying just hasn't been great. He's shown some good race day pace. And, you know, this weekend, the qualifying pace was there. They both were in Q3. You can argue that maybe second row flattered them a little bit based on the conditions, but he still had to get the job done in difficult conditions. And then today, he actually fell back on both the initial start and the restart, but got himself back up into the top 5. It was kind of a quiet day. We didn't talk about him a ton on the broadcast, but it was a very smooth, very consistent, again, it's another well-executed day. And for sure, it'll be a big confidence boost this whole weekend, because practice pace, he was close to Fernando. Qualifying pace, he was ahead of Fernando. And in the race, a top 5, solid result.
Yeah, well-managed race from Lance Stroll. Some great overtakes out there as well. And we do have a factory tour as well. I got an exclusive look of the Aston Martin brand new campus that they have, one of the most sustainable buildings in Formula One as well. That will be coming to you at the end of the season. So you can see where some of the magic happens. And I think it's fair to say to Aston Martin, we'll hope this is not a flash in the pan for them, but perhaps it is now an indication that they are on the right path. There is an understanding of the direction they're taking this car.
I think it's too early to tell that for sure. I think a lot of other teams had bad days. Not to take anything away from what they accomplished today. Obviously, still a tremendous result. But this was, again, almost like Mexico in another way, where we saw some of the slower teams have really good days. Here we saw some of the mighty teams really struggle, like Mercedes, like Ferrari. We'll see in Vegas. We'll see in Abu Dhabi. Abu Dhabi is always a great, barometer, because everybody's got so many miles around that place. They've raced there a ton. So we'll see, I think, by the end of the season, how strong a position Aston Martin is already going into the offseason.
It's so interesting. It's been kind of a theme this season, hasn't it, that we've not quite known where teams fall each weekend. And it means that that's our excuse anyway for how poor our predictions have been. We did all predict a Lando Norris win for this weekend. I think I actually predicted Lewis Hamilton, so sorry
Pretty sure
about that.
I said Max, didn't I?
Oh, no,
on the grid? I think on the grid I said Max.
Okay, anyway, it was a brilliant battle for the lead, wasn't it? That one lap we saw where Lando closed the gap right up. He was within 0.3, 0.4 seconds of Max Verstappen, and he was fighting. Jolyon Palmer questioning on commentary whether that was full deployment, because what we saw in the laps after, that response from Max, was pretty extraordinary, wasn't it? Pretty damning.
It really was.
Yeah.
It just shows you how in command he is of these Grand Prix when he's out front. That was the first time I think he's been genuinely threatened for position on track after, say, a first lap of a start or restart. And Max, incredible racer still. He hasn't lost any of his racecraft leading, 500, 600 laps, whatever it's been so far this season. But as soon as he realized he was under threat, he just turns it up a notch or two, controls the pace from there. It is truly incredible. What you look at the end of that first stint on the softs, started on the full fuel, managing those tires, the pace that he was still hanging on to when guys that had already pitted for new tires were struggling to keep up with. His command of a race is, I've never seen anything like it. He has so much in reserve at all times.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. I think it was about a second in the lap, in the one lap after as well, that he managed to take out of Lando. But take nothing away from the race we saw from Lando Norris today, because there is some serious pace in that driver and serious pace in that McLaren as well. Let's hear now from our top two, Lando Norris and Max Verstappen.
Hi, Lando. P2 today. You keep saying that you don't have the performance this weekend and you deliver a trophy for your team. You must be driving really well right now. How are you feeling?
No, I mean, honestly, the performance has been there all weekend. I mean, we messed up qualifying on Friday, but every other opportunity we've had, qualifying yesterday, the race yesterday, and again the race today, we've done, I think, as good as we could always have done. So I'm very happy. A lot of points, two more podiums. Yeah, not enough to win. Max is still just always that little bit too far ahead for us, but I'm still really happy with the whole weekend.
You have 2 more chances to get him. Is there any chance you can get Vegas Abu
I have no
Dhabi.
clue on the next few tracks. I mean, we've performed better here than I was expecting, and I think as a team we were all expecting, which is, again, a very good positive for us, that we're performing at tracks which shouldn't be so good for us. But Vegas is a question mark for everyone, so I'm looking forward to it.
All right, thank you very much.
Cheers, man.
But after that, just went off into the distance and another great victory. Talk us through it.
Yeah, I think for like every stint, the first half of it, Lando was doing the same lap times as me, but it was always the last 5 to 10 laps where it seemed like we had a little bit more pace than McLaren today, and we could extend our gap a little bit all the time. So that was definitely positive for us today. But he gave it a good run. I mean that lap where I had to defend, it was close that he got by me, but I think then also Lando realized, I have to save my tires to make sure that we make it to the end of the stint in the best possible way.
He seems to be your closest challenger at the moment. You guys are constantly going toe-to-toe now. I mean, what's it like to go up against him, and do you look forward to that more in the future?
Yeah, but I'm not surprised. I know how good Lando is, and it's nice to see him there. He deserves that as well. McLaren deserves that, and hopefully we'll have many more battles.
And also, lastly, 52nd win of your career. You now go 4th by yourself, ahead of Alain Prost. I mean, each week it seems to be a new record that you're breaking. You and your team must be enjoying this run at the moment.
Yeah, it's just like you said, enjoying the moment, and hopefully, to the end of the year we can add 1 or 2 more.
All right, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
17 wins for Max Verstappen and a 7th podium as well for Lando Norris. We're getting used to seeing these two battling at the very front of the field as well. We feel that first win in Formula One for Lando Norris is not too far away, but for now everything is going Max Verstappen and Red Bull's way. And indeed Sergio Perez as well backing up the Red Bull team with a brilliant P4 so close to the podium. And we can now welcome Julien Simon-Chautemps, who has joined us for F1 TV for this weekend. Julien, what a race, what a finish. What did you make of it?
Well, it was amazing. The start was absolutely fantastic. But I just want to bring something about the emotion during this red flag, because I tried to explain a bit what was happening, but that's the worst that can happen for a team, because suddenly, especially at the start, it was clear it would have been a red flag. It's a bit of a panic at this moment. You say, wow, what do we do now? The team are getting better, but believe me, the first time they put it up again, I think it was Mugello in 2020, it was a complete chaos. So you might see all very organized, and then we came out with all these checklists, what we have to do and so on, but it went well. After the start, here we knew it was very, very important, the start. And that's what we've seen. We've seen a lot of tire degradation, a bit of DRS trend at the end, in the middle, but yeah, it was all about managing these tires, trying to extend as long as possible these stints, and saving again one more time these tires. And then at the end we've seen a fantastic battle with Alonso and Perez. It was very fair, I think you will agree, very clean battle, so fantastic, I loved it.
In really heightened emotional moments, like we saw, the start, the crashes at the start, like we saw, of course, with Charles Leclerc as well, having to DNF before the race has even begun, before he's even had a chance. How do you, as an engineer, deal with a situation like that with a driver?
That's terrible. That's terrible. Normally, it depends on the driver. Obviously, they're all human, but you try to take him apart and then show him, listen. I think the best in this situation is to be straight with him and to tell him, listen, that's what happened. We had power steering failure, hydraulic failure, show him the data and trying to give him first explanation and bring some science into the failure, because that's where Formula One team are really good, is they to come back after a failure, you know what I mean? And they are very quick normally to react to that, and that's where they are good. So I will take him under my ale and I will tell him, listen, we still have 2 more races, and it's not the end of the world, and we keep racing, and next week or so we're still there, so let's keep pushing.
Yeah, that honesty is really important, right, between a team and a driver. If a driver makes a mistake, as a team, you want the driver to be able to come to the garage and say, hey guys, sorry I made that mistake. Likewise, if there's a mechanical failure, your driver really wants to hear it from the team. Hey, sorry we let you down today. Here's what happened. Here's how we're going to make sure it never happens again. That kind of communication is really important, isn't it?
It's absolutely fundamental. And all the drivers I work with, I was always super straight with them. I was saying, we had an issue. This was a problem, and if you are not clear and if you are not fair, if you are not straight, the driver will feel it, and then you will lose his trust. So I've always been like this, I always try to be straight to the point and tell him, listen, that's what's happening, I'm sorry, it's a failure. It will never happen again. We'll work on that, but you need to be fair with the driver, you know, and you need to be honest.
Yeah.
You know, if he feels that you're trying to hiding something or to hide something, that's the end of the trust. And trust, that's the key of success in the sport.
And I've been on the other side of it. I've had debates with an engineer. I'm like, no, I think this is what happened. They're like, well, I don't think that's what happened. I think this is what happened. And it's really tough. And that honesty, I think, is just such an important thing. Like you say, trust is the key to success in this business.
Absolutely.
You got to trust the people. You got to trust the car. There's a lot of trust involved.
And Julian, as we're talking here about how to deal with the emotions of drivers, I've got to ask the question, who was more difficult for you to deal with? Kimi Räikkönen or Jolyon Palmer?
Oh, Jolyon Palmer, by far. He was a complete nightmare.
I knew it.
No, I'm joking. And Jolyon was absolutely amazing. I mean, he was, a massive, good relationship. He even gave me his helmet at the end of the season, which I still have in my office. And we kept in touch all over the year. But talking more, Jolyon was very hard-working guy. I remember spending hours and hours in the office trying to improve. And that was the year we were against Kevin. You know, he was really hyped up into the team. And up to Budapest, the first part of the season, you know, we were there, we were beating me. We scored his first point together, and he was very easy to work with. With Kimi, the difference, he was someone with such a charisma, such a, you know what I mean, people were almost scared of him. But I had a very strong relationship with him, and somehow he was relatively easy to work because he knew so much what he wanted. He could have been a really good race engineer himself because he knew what he wanted, and he was telling me, Julian, if you can fix this problem in this corner, I will go faster. End of the story. And there was no blah blah, no, you know, there was
Straight
no politic. He was
Yeah.
straight to the point. He created some issue. I have to be honest. I remember a story where we have a specific set of simulation that were giving a heave spring, for example. That was the best one, and he wanted to go on that, but you know, the team didn't want it. Kimi wanted it, and at the end I said no, we do it, and then he went quicker. So that's it. That was Kimi. So.
And you know, we joke, but actually that hard work and that attention to detail you mentioned there for Jolyon, we see actually as his colleagues now as well. There you go, a nice compliment for you, Jolyon, just the one for this season. Okay, let's hear from Christian Horner. He's with IMI.
Christian, thanks for joining us. Firstly, huge congratulations. Must be fantastic seeing Max up there again.
Yeah, an amazing performance by Max. His season has just been, you know, so incredible. Managing the races in the way that he has for his 17th victory of the season. I think his percentage of win record now even beats Ascari. So again, a record-breaking run, but equally pleasing today was Checo's performance, and so coming so close to getting that podium.
What was it like for you watching that battle out there against Fernando Alonso?
That was great. It's good motor racing. That's what we're all fans of. And you know, Fernando's a great driver, and he was being super smart how he used his energy and coming onto the straight. Checo made the move, he got the job done, and then he had a moment on the next lap at turn 2, and that gave Fernando a run back at him. But yeah, it was very, very close to the finish there.
Checo's had a great weekend. How is he going to be taking that into Vegas with you as a team?
I think, look, he's put 12 points on his nearest rival, 32 points ahead, 2 races to go. If he beats him in Vegas, it's the job done. But you know, let's see.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
A P1 and a P2 in the Driver Championship would be something for Red Bull. That would be a clean sweep for the season. We'll see as we head to Vegas. Hinch, your thoughts on that race? You'll be joining us again there.
I just love all the question marks. I love the unknowns going into a race weekend, brand new circuit, completely different conditions to what we normally are racing. It's gonna be a lot cooler. It's a night race. It's Vegas, baby. I mean, it's gonna be great.
I know, one of the world's biggest sports and the entertainment capital of the world. It's just going to be the most incredible melting pot. Julian, I know you love a challenge, and I'm sure, Hinch, actually, if you weren't standing here and you were driving, you perhaps wouldn't be as up for the unknown as you are. But as an engineer, how challenging will it be?
Well, it will be challenging, but the driver will spend hours and hours in the simulator, so they will arrive, they will know the track. The biggest challenge for me will be an night race. I think it will be quite cold, new asphalt, so I think it will be a struggle for the tires, but the place will be amazing. So as you said, it will be Vegas, so looking forward.
It will be extraordinary, won't it? Thank you both so much. Let's take a look then at the schedule for that race in Las Vegas. Okay, so pre-FP1 show, that will be at 20:15. Track time will be in FP1 mode at 8:30. We'll, of course, have weekend warm-up before that as well to get you in the mood. We'll then have our pre-FP2 show, 11:45 for a 12 p.m. midnight FP2. FP3 again at 20:15 and 8:30. Pre-quali show, that comes at 11:30 into a midnight quali, and then the race, that is at 10 p.m. with a 8:50 start for our pre-race show. It's going to be an offset schedule. It's going to be a tricky night race. It's going to be spectacular. That is Vegas, though. This has been the Sao Paulo Grand Prix. Max Verstappen with his 17th win of the season. Lando Norris with his 7th podium, and Fernando Alonso back up there. What a race we've seen. Thanks so much for watching. See you in Vegas.
I'm extremely excited for Vegas. This was going to be the best race of all time.
Vegas is going to be huge.
Things are going to get pretty crazy.
Did you really think I was going to miss this? Come on, it's Vegas, baby.